Okay, folks, welcome back to the C Files, and it's getting late, but I am going to continue going on because we're going to be doing the Battle for Christmas. I will be reading this book till the end of February if I have to get through it because it's a really good book. And I'm going to try to get through as much of chapter two as I can today. Let me get back over to where I was. And this is really good because it's the history of Christmas in the United States of America. And it's a fascinating history. So if you want to go back and see where I've already done some readings, go back and learn some history. I'm going to do history books on this channel for a long time to come, a long time to come. There's a lot of good books I can do. Here's one I just received. Uh, Heaven Displaced, oh, I'm sorry, Heaven Misplaced, Christ's Kingdom on Earth by Douglas Wilson. It's a thin book. It's looks really good. I'm looking forward to reading it. And read it to you guys right here in um, different videos as we go along. Now, this one's going to be about Christmas since we're in the Christmas season right now. We'll run past season on through and we'll just continue learning this history. Now, on page 65, we finished up and we're at the bottom of the page and it talks about Clement Clark Moore, country gentleman. So let's learn about Clement Clark Moore, country gentleman. And he begins where he left off, and he says, which finally brings me to Clement Clark Moore, the author of A Visit from St. Nicholas. If we have any image of the man at all, it is apt to be of a benevolent figure, a scholarly but genial professor of Hebrew, who stepped just this once out of his ivory tower to write for his own children. Those magical verses about what happened on the night before Christmas. He is a man who would appear to be as distant from the wider currents of history and politics as the figure of Santa Claus himself. The image is not particularly misleading, and it is not my intention to dispel it. Still, Moore did have a real existence. He was born in 1779, that is during the Revolutionary War, and died 84 years later in 1863 during the Civil War. Wow, he went from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War. Think about that. That's pretty incredible. And he fits perfectly the Knickerbocker mold. High church Episcopalian, politically conservative, and quintessentially upper class. Moore's father was for 35 years Episcopal bishop of the Diocese of New York. And Moore himself, though a layman, was an active and influential figure in the church. In fact, Moore held his professorship. I'll try it again. In fact, Moore held his professorship in a seminary that he himself had helped to establish. He's one of the founders. Moore was also conservative. His parents and grandparents had been closest, oh, I'm sorry, his parents and grandparents had been closet Tories. Uh-oh. The Tories were not the Patriots. They were for England. Oh, closet Tories during the American Revolution, an open Federalist afterward. Okay. Moore's own brand of conservatism took the form of an agrarian paternalism, not far removed from that of a wealthy Virginia planter of the same generation. As a young man, Clement Moore himself published a series of tracts attacking both Jeffersonian radicalism and urban commerce. And to the end of his life, he remained suspicious of democracy and other reforms. For example, in middle age, he opposed the movement to abolish slavery. Indeed, at the time, Moore wrote A Visit from St. Nicholas in 1822, he himself owned 5 slaves. Uh-oh. That's going to ruin it for some folks. Oh boy. Moore's ideology Moore's ideology was well suited to his social position. He was an old style country gentleman, a patrician man of leisure who inherited so much land and the income it brought that he never needed to take a job. Moore accepted his professorship when he was past 40 and for a token slave salary in a seminary constructed on land himself had donated for the purpose. He inherited his mother's large Manhattan estate, originally located well to the north of New York City. The estate, which bore the name Chelsea, extended all the way from what is now 19th Street to 24th Street and from 8th to 10th Avenue. This estate has given its name to the present day Chelsea district of the city, just north of Greenwich Village. So if you're from New York, you might know that area. But when Moore was a young man, this area was isolated and pastoral. Well, John Pintard, who knew Moore well, wrote in 1830 that his Chelsea estate alone was worth $500,000. Now, translate that into today's money, that's multi-millions. He also acknowledged Moore as his social superior, writing that even though he and Moore had been always on the most friendly terms, I have resisted all hospitalities when sitting in his eloquently furnished drawing room, for he is wealthy. Still, Moore's great wealth did not prove sufficient to insulate him from the pressures that transformed New York in the first decades of the 19th century. In 1811, as already noted, the New York City Council approved a grid system of numbered streets and avenues that would crisscross the island above 14th Street. By the time Moore wrote A Visit from St. Nicholas, New York was expanding north through Chelsea itself. In fact, late in 1818, something called Ninth Avenue was dug right through the middle of his estate, the land having been taken from him by eminent domain. Wow. In 1821, the 1821 city directory lists Moore as residing not in Chelsea, but near the corner of 9th Avenue and 21st Street. 11 years later, in 1832, John Pintard visited Chelsea and mused about the changes that had overtaken the neighborhood, filled now, as Pintard put it, with streets that had become regularly built up where but a few years ago all was open country. Oh, those real estate developers taking advantage. It really surprised me to notice a dense population and contiguous buildings in what only 10 years since was merely a sparse city. By the 1850s, the entire hill on which Moore's house stood had been leveled to make new land and bulkheads along the Hudson River waterfront, and Moore had built new homes for himself and his family. Moore was disturbed by the transformation of his city and the cutting up of his estate. In 1818, the very year that his property was bisected by Ninth Avenue, and just 4 years before he wrote A Visit from St. Nicholas, Moore published a pamphlet that protested against the relentless development of New York. In it, he expressed a fear that the city's beauty and tranquility would be lost forever, and that its future was already in what he termed destructive and ruthless hands, the hands of men who did not respect the rights of property. City politics and policy were controlled by men more described as mechanics and persons whose influence is principally among those classes of the community to whom it is indifferent what the eventual result of their industry may be to society. New York was being turned over to a conspiracy, and more named its members, calling them out. Cartmen, carpenters, masons, pavers, and all their host of attendant laborers. Moore doubted that the city could, as he put it, be saved from ruin. And he was pessimistic about the future of his class. We quote, "We know not the amount nor the extent of oppression which may yet be reserved for us." End quote. From St. Nicholas to Santa Claus on page 71. It was at this difficult juncture in 1822 that Clement Clark Moore wrote A Visit from St. Nicholas. As we already know, Moore did not invent the night before Christmas out of whole cloth. To the distant background was the old Dutch ritual, and John Pintard and Washington Irving often more immediate models, offered more immediate models. In addition, three other poems, two from 1810 and the third from 1821, would provide more materials. For example, Santa's sleigh and reindeer, and even the poetic meter that Moore would employ. Moore's own contributions may have been small, but they were crucial to the creation of a myth that suited the needs of his own Knickerbocker set, and that finally proved malleable enough to transcend those needs and to be appropriated by other groups of Americans. It is the time to examine more closely the sources Moore had at his disposal. First, Washington Irving. Yes, there were 25 references to St. Nicholas in Knickerbocker's history. But Irving represented St. Nicholas not as a figure who appeared during the Christmas season, but rather in the way that John Pintard had originally introduced him to the New York Historical Society, that is, as the mythic patron saint of New York. Oh, I'm sorry, of New Amsterdam. I skipped a line. That is, as the mystic patron saint of New Amsterdam. Early in Knickerbocker's history, Irving wrote that the great and good St. Nicholas took New Amsterdam under his peculiar patronage and has ever since been the titular saint of this excellent city. In this role, St. Nicholas, he never actually appears except once in a dream scene and again as the wooden figurehead on a ship, was essentially an amusing caricature of the old-time Dutch gentry who inhabited Irving's imaginary New Amsterdam. A genial yet obviously patrician saint, dressed in a broad hat and invariably smoking a long pipe. Moore would later pick that up, but with one difference. Next, the 1810 broadside picture that John Pintard commissioned, together with the verse that accompanied it, also influenced Moore. Then the two anonymous poems one from 1810 and the other from 1821. In all these writings, the pipe disappeared, and so did the satire. But St. Nicholas himself finally became a figure who distributed gifts to children during the Christmas season. Still, in all these sources, the saint was very much a figure of majesty and authority, or at least of benevolent, kindly dignity. The real St. Nicholas, if he existed at all, was an actual bishop. And in any case, he was an official saint, the real patron of saint of both Russia and Greece. As a bishop, St. Nicholas was a direct representative of God and a figure of great authority as well as great charity. So it is not surprising that John Pintard would wish him to be represented in such a serious fashion in the broadside he commissioned, and not, as Washington Irving had irreverently done, as a humorous figure. In this illustration, page 70, I can't give you the illustration. St. Nicholas has come not just to reward, but also to punish. He is a figure of authority. We see him with his halo, ecclesiastical robes, and bishop's scepter. St. Nicholas retained that air of authority in a poem that appeared in a New York newspaper just 2 weeks after Pintard's broadside. This poem, essentially a longer, more elaborate version of Pintard's, opens in a similar fashion with a child hailing St. Nicholas, this time not in awkward iambic, but in a more tripping meter. In fact, the exact meter that Moore would employ 12 years later. Anapestic titam, tetrameter, and an anapestic tetrameter. There you go. It opens, O good holy man, whom we Saint Claus name, the nursery forever, your praise shall proclaim. The poem goes on to catalog the presents St. Nicholas might be expected to leave, followed by a prayer that St. Nicholas not come for the purpose of punishment. If in your hurry one thing you mislay, let that be rod and oh, keep it away. And it concludes with a promise of future behavior. Then, Holy St. Nicholas, all the year, our books we will love and our parents revere. From naughty behavior we'll always refrain, in hopes that you'll come and reward us again. The pattern of authority and judgment holds even in the poem that was Clement Moore's most immediate source. Published in 1821, only a year before Moore wrote A Visit from St. Nicholas, this poem appeared as a little illustrated book called The Children's Friend. Here, for the first time, we find St. Nicholas appearing not on December 6th, but on Christmas Eve. And we also find him traveling on a sleigh that is pulled by a reindeer, a single reindeer. But he is still a bishop, a child's bishop, perhaps, a figure who metes out punishments along with rewards, and whose visit is designed to inspire anxiety with hope. Clear the throat, read the poem. Old Santa Claus with much delight, his reindeer drives this frosty night, or chimney tops and tracks of snow to bring his yearly gifts to you. The steady friend of virtuous youth, the friend of duty and of truth. Each Christmas Eve he joys to come where love and peace have made their home. Through many houses he has been, and various beds and stockings seen, some white as snow and neatly mended, others that seemed for pigs intended. Where'er I found good girls or boys that hated quarrels and strife and noise. I left an apple or tart or wooden gun or painted cart. To some, I gave a pretty doll. To some, a peg top or a ball. No crackers, no crackers, cannons, squibs, or rockets to blow their eyes up or their pockets. No drums to stun their mother's ear, no swords to make their sisters fear, but pretty books to store their mind with knowledge of each various kind. But where I found the children naughty, in manners rude, in temper haughty, thankless to parents, liars, swearers, boxers, or cheats, or base tale-bearers. I left alone black birchen rod, such as the dread command of God directs a parent's hand to use when virtue's path his sons refuse. This kind of Christmas can be thought of as a mini version of the Day of Judgment, insofar as the history of gift giving on St. Nicholas Day can be traced to Europe. It is this kind of judgmental ritual that seems to have been involved. It can be seen in a 17th century painting, St. Nicholas Day, by the Dutch painter Jan Steen, in which there appear both presents and punishments. Even today, something of this notion still lingers in the American celebration of Christmas, as, for example, in a song that begins, "You'd better watch out, Santa Claus is coming to town," and continues, "He knows if you've been sleeping, he knows if you're awake, he knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake." To be sure, this kind of Christmas ritual is designed largely for children, while Judgment Day is for adults. Christmas took place once a year, Judgment once an eternity. The judge at Christmas was St. Nicholas. On Judgment Day, it was God Himself. And both the rewards and the punishments meted out on Christmas, a cookie on the one hand, or a birch rod on the other, were far less weighty than those of eternal joy or eternal damnation. But the parallel was always there and always meant to be there. Christmas was a child's version of Judgment Day, and its ambiguous prospects of reward or punishment, like those of Judgment Day itself. There were a means of regulating children's behavior and preparing them for the greater judgment that was to come. Indeed, the children's friend even speaks of the birch rod as a product of the dread command of God. The next section, from the day of doom to the night before Christmas. The threat of judgment was gone the next year when Moore wrote A Visit from St. Nicholas. Lord St. Nicholas, as we all know, leaves only presents and goodwill, and he makes no threats, not even gentle ones. There is no warning of the birch rod, no hints about messy rooms or bad behavior. There's no stick to join the carrot. There's no little day of judgment. There's only a happy Christmas to all. This shift is all the more striking because the structure of A Visit from St. Nicholas, unlike that of its immediate sources, parallels the structure of a 17th century American poem about the real Judgment Day. That poem, written by Massachusetts clergyman Michael Wigglesworth, was published in 1662 with the title The Day of Doom. It was nearly as popular in its own time as A Visit from St. Nicholas is today, and it retained its popularity into the early 19th century. Both poems begin with a scene in which people are sleeping serenely on a still night. dreaming of good things to come. It is the night before Christmas in one case, the evening before doomsday in the other. And I'll read this and it does a comparison between the two, so I'll do the comparison. Still was the night, serene and bright, when all men sleeping lay. Calm was the season, and carnal reason thought so 'twould last for aye. Soul, take thine ease, let sorrow cease, much good thou hast in store. 'Tis was their song the evening before, virgins unwise had closed their eyes, yea, and the wise through sloth and fertility slumbered. Let's see how this compares. 'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads, and Mamma in her kerchief, and I in my cap, had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. Then suddenly the slumbering calm is shattered by a sound that rouses the sleepers, causing them to leap out of bed and run to the window. So here it is, the original poem first. For at midnight brake forth a light which turned the night to day, and speedily and hideous cry did all the world dismay. Sinners awake, their hearts do ache, trembling their loins, surprised, amazed with fear, by what they hear, each one of them ariseth. They rush from beds with giddy heads and to their windows run. Now the comparison. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. At the window, they witnessed the arrival through the air of an unexpected supernatural visitor, accompanied by other magical creatures. Here's the original poem first. Viewing this light which shines more bright than doth the noonday sun, straightway appears, they'd see with tears, the Son of God most dread, who with his train comes on amain to judge both quick and dead. His winged host fly through all coast together gathering, both good and bad, both quick and dead, and all the to judgment bring. Now here's the second poem. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles, his courses they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. These parallels make the contrast between the two poems all the more acute. In the day of doom, the supernatural visitor has come as a pitiless judge. He causes everyone to come before his throne to separate those who can look forward to eternal happiness from those who are filled with the dreadful expectation of endless pains and scalding flames. In a visit from St. Nicholas, he is a jolly fellow who reassumes his. No, I'm sorry. He's a jolly fellow who reassures his startled company that they have nothing to dread, and who departs from the house wishing happiness to all. I'm not sure whether Moore read The Day of Doom, but so close are the parallels between the two poems that it is difficult to avoid speculating that the one was written with the other somewhat in mind. If so, then the Day of Doom constitutes another source of a visit from St. Nicholas. What Moore has evoked in any case, is Christmas without the prospect of judgment. Without such a prospect, St. Nicholas himself loses his authority. Indeed, he loses his very identity as a bishop. And More's lengthy physical description of St. Nicholas reinforces the point such a description is not to be found in any of More's sources, but here it takes up four of the poem's 14 stanzas. Santa's eyes twinkle. His cheeks are rosy, his dimples merry, his mouth is droll, his figure chubby and plump, his manner jolly. He is tiny, the size of an elf. His appearance and manner actually cause the narrator to laugh out loud in spite of himself. In every possible way, then More St. Nicholas has lost his authority, his majesty, even his patrician dignity. He carries no bishop's scepter. He is clothed not in a bishop's red robes, despite the illustrations we may recall from the modern editions of the poem, but in ordinary fur. This St. Nicholas is no bishop at all. He has effective, he has effectively been defrocked. But only, let's see, but not only has More defrocked St. Nicholas, he has declassed him too. It is not only his authority that has vanished, his gentiality is gone as well. His gentility is gone as well. Consider how St. Nicholas is pictured in the first illustration edition of More's poem, dating from 1848, and probably issued with More's approval. He looks like a plebeian, and that's also how he is described in the text. Remember that More says he looked like a peddler just opening his pack, something that is between a beggar and a petty tradesman. I'm gonna see if I can get this picture on the screen for you. Right, there's a right big enough. Come on, come on, come on, come on. The background's get right there. Can you catch it? Right there it is. Found it. That was that was Moore's original Santa Claus right there. Quite different from the day. Cleveland St. Nicholas. This illustration appeared in the first book-length edition of A Visit from St. Nicholas, published in 1484. I'm sorry, 14 in 1848 under Moore's name, and almost certainly with his approval. There's something else. There's some other pictures here, but none of that. Oh, yeah, it even has one showing the cross section of New York from like an aerial type view. We'll come back next time with the stump on a pipe, and we are on page 78, and we only have a few pages to go, all the way up to page 89 to finish up this chapter. Another 11 pages or so. 10 pages, I'd say. And then it's chapter 3, The Parlor in the Street. So what an awesome book. I love this book. I love history. I love good history books. The way this one is written, it's just so entertaining to read it. And you learn a little bit about some things about Christmas history that you probably never knew. I didn't. Well, God bless, folks. Thanks for watching the video. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed my reading of this book. And yeah, I wish all of you the best and a wonderful Merry Christmas, as it's coming up very soon from just a couple weeks away. Um, and don't forget to honor our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, uh, his coming and his incarnation, and came to save sinners from their sin on the cross. Thanks for watching. God bless. We'll see you next time here on the C Files.